Steve, is it fair to say with a budget like this one that the pain of tax rises can be seen immediately, but the promised results, the school building, the breakfast clubs, the cutting waiting lists and so on, simply takes more time and doesn't grab headlines in the same way?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And kind of in many ways, the kind of deflated feeling that maybe some have from the budget is precisely because of that. Because as Rachel Reeves said on Wednesday, kind of her key kind of argument was they were going to invest, invest, invest. And that kind of thing takes a long time to kick in. And she would have probably been quite disappointed when she kind of got the final report from the OBR on the impact of what it would have on growth, because we're seeing kind of like a sugar rush on growth in the first couple of years, and then there's kind of overall there's no real effect. But if you look over the long term horizon, there is some impact on kind of the investment moves that they're making that will pay off in the longer term.
Well, I know all about Sugar Rush after last night's sweet haul. But Steve, I mean, one thing we should bear in mind as well is that the OBR's kind of growth forecasts, they don't take into account everything that Labour has planned to do, because some of that isn't on the books yet, and they can only look at what's actually on the books. So they can't look at, for example, the plans to loosen the planning laws.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think to a certain extent, that's what Labour are banking on. As you say, the kind of OBR basically can't estimate what the effect of these kind of investments will be. But the hope is that they can be really kind of quite transformational. So what they're taking into account at the moment is what the kind of effect of investment on certain public sectors, how the impact that will have in terms of kind of crowding in private investment, it being a kind of complement. And at the moment, there's not much. What there is kind of overpowered by crowding out effects, whereby because the government's spending money, the private sector can't spend as much. But over the long term, as I kind of said, those kind of things will kick in. But yeah, things about planning, those kind of things will hopefully create a greater boost than we're seeing in the forecast so far.
Right. Steve, we're still not at the yields we saw after Liz Truss's mini budget, but when yields go up, it does make government borrowing more expensive. That obviously costs more money. Is there a risk that this hampers the Chancellor's spending plans, or even means she breaks her fiscal rules?
Yeah, because those interest rates directly feed into how much interest the government's paying, and that is part of one of our first fiscal rules, which has changed to be that the current budget is balanced. So, if those kind of yields continue to increase, there's going to get to a point where she can't balance that budget, and she's already breaking one of those rules. So I would imagine there's a slight concern within the Treasury this morning.
The economy
Well,
is a massive, complex knot
yeah.
of string, isn't it? And sometimes if you pull at one side, you don't necessarily get the reaction that you're expecting. So talk to me about national insurance and whether increasing employers' national insurance is inflationary because their costs go up, so they put their prices up, or if it's
Mhm.
deflationary because it suppresses wage growth for employees.
In
Don't say
in
both. They
that,
can't be both.
well, I'll give you the economist answer. It depends, as well. But yeah,
Such an
it can.
economist's answer.
Yes, completely. I mean, yeah, it definitely will be a bit of both, and it will take some time to see how it plays out. Now, what we can definitely be sure about is that this rise on NICs will impact working people, no matter what the kind of brain melting debate there's been in the previous week. Um, as you heard, Paul was discussing that like businesses, people will have to consider, like employers will have to pass this on. The OBR projects it will be about kind of 75% of this tax rise will be paid by suppressed wages by people in that way. So you could argue that is like not impacting inflation, but it is obviously going to have a negative impact on growth in that respect. So in many respects, there are kind of negative impacts from using this tax lever, but that's of really the government's own making by kind of closing off any other option. I think most economists would argue that it would have been much more simple that to raise the revenue, to raise one of the to basically raise it on income tax. You would have raised more money, and there probably would have been slightly less distortions than we're going to see because they're rising it on employers. And also, I think some of that kind of anger you heard from business owners is kind of justified. Taking each one on its own, the kind of the rise in the minimum wage, the change in regulations to employers, and the rising of employer NICs, each are kind of justified. But put them all together as a package, and you do get the sense that businesses are being hammered, which kind of runs counter to the narrative that the government have been trying to sell, that they're a pro-business government. Now, I'm not arguing that there isn't kind of some space to kind of rebalance the kind of tax system, maybe more towards business and away from labour. But it does feel like business have taken quite a big hit in this budget.
Well, no one, Steve, is going to assume UK productivity will go up based on this budget. What do you think? Is this a budget for growth and productivity?
I think, yeah, in the long run, there's definitely signs that some of this investment will pay off. And like the OBR is maybe slightly more positive in terms of the kind of how much the investment will kind of boost the productive capacity. But I mean, we're talking small figures, about 0.14% by kind of 28, 29. So it's, I mean, even the long run effects they estimate are, I mean, we were talking kind of like 50 years is to boost it by about 1.4%. So it kind of really is a sign of how hard it is for kind of to turn around this kind of truck of productivity. But I think a lot of the kind of things that Shanti talked to there can have some effect. So I think in that respect, they're definitely recognizing the need to do this kind of spending, this investment spending. It's big, like in that respect, as Shanti says, it is principled. It realizes that this is something that the country needs. Now, it's not going to be kind of a quick turnaround, but there's longer run implications to be slightly positive about, I think.